Welcome to HFY Vanguard, where humanity defies the impossible. Today, a human rides the beast to freedom. Let's begin. Commander Arthur Hansen stepped off the Alliance shuttle and onto the landing platform of Elysium Station, the central hub orbiting above the alien world of Narathos. The platform's polished black surface reflected the shimmer of neon bioluminescent veins that ran through the very metal, as if the structure itself was alive. Arthur adjusted the seals of his combat suit, letting the matte-finished titanium alloy plates shift to balance the slightly heavier pull of Narathosian gravity. The adjustment was automatic courtesy of human engineering, something he trusted more than anything else out here in alien space. The air smelled faintly metallic sterile but tinged with something organic. A calm voice crackled in his ear from the station's AI system. Breathable atmosphere confirmed. Do not remove your filtration module. Local microbes are non-lethal but will cause severe dermatological irritation. Arthur smirked faintly. A rash as a souvenir. Just what I need. He scanned the alien architecture with narrowed eyes. Narathos was infamous across the Galactic Alliance for two things: its breathtaking advances in biotechnology and its equally suffocating hierarchy. Here, every building seemed alive, sleek towers of living metal intertwined with tissue-like growths that pulsed faintly, glowing with internal energy. It was beautiful and unsettling in equal measure. Commander Hansen, a voice called, melodic and smooth, carrying through the noise of the platform. Arthur turned. For a moment, his usually unshakable professionalism faltered. The woman approaching him moved with fluid grace, her slender figure wrapped in a bodysuit of deep black and navy that looked equal parts tactical gear and ceremonial attire. The suit had angular cutouts that exposed glowing blue skin, etched with thin, luminescent lines. These markings ran in symmetrical patterns across her arm's neck, and even her cheekbones like delicate tattoos that pulsed faintly with her heartbeat. Her hair was silver white, braided back in intricate loops that shimmered under the station lights, and her large eyes glowed with white irises, alien yet mesmerizing. She stopped a measured distance away and bowed formally instead of extending her hand. "I'm Liaison Invari," she said, voice steady and official. "I've been assigned to facilitate your inspection of our biological research facilities." Arthur straightened his posture, towering nearly a foot above her. "Commander Arthur Hansen, Galactic Alliance Security Council." He gave a small nod of respect. "Thank you for meeting me, Liaison Invari." "You may call me Ira," she replied, tone cool, almost distant. "The High Council has granted you access to all facilities except the sacred temples. Your visit, we trust, will be brief and uneventful." The subtle emphasis wasn't lost on him. She wasn't just delivering hospitality, she was reminding him of boundaries. Arthur forced a diplomatic smile. "Brevity and peace are virtues I can live with. Shall we?" Ira gestured toward a hovering transport platform nearby. "The primary research complex is located in the northern quadrant. We'll arrive before the moons converge this evening." As they boarded, Arthur caught the way the other Narathosians glanced at him. Their expressions carried thinly veiled disdain, as if a human in their city was a curiosity bordering on offense. Humans, after all, had joined the galactic stage barely 70 years ago, latecomers compared to civilizations that measured their histories in tens of thousands of years. To them, humanity was a brash child barging into a council of elders. The transport glided soundlessly through the alien metropolis. Transparent tubes crisscrossed above them, carrying streams of Narathosians who moved like coordinated schools of bioluminescent fish. Massive organic towers rose into the misty sky, their surfaces alive with flowing light. It was breathtaking, though the coldness in the people's eyes made the beauty feel like a display case, gorgeous but unwelcoming. Arthur decided to break the silence. "Your people have accomplished remarkable things, truly a civilization of wonder." Ira's expression remained impassive. "We've had 50,000 years to perfect our society. When your species was striking flint for fire, we were mapping the stars." Arthur chuckled, leaning back casually. "And yet here I sit beside you as an equal representative of the Galactic Alliance. Funny how time can level the field." For the first time, something flickered in her glowing eyes. Annoyance, amusement, perhaps both. "Do you truly believe we are equals, Commander?" she asked softly. He opened his mouth to answer, but was cut short as the transport veered downward toward a heavily fortified facility half submerged in a shimmering iridescent lake. Unlike the elegant towers of the city, this complex was ringed by towering security barriers and patrols of armed guards. Arthur immediately sensed the tension in the air. "The Aquatic Research Division," Ira explained, her voice carrying a note of reluctance. "This facility wasn't on your itinerary, but circumstances require Alliance verification." Arthur raised a brow. "A situation?" "A containment issue," she replied cryptically. "The High Council believes an outside witness would be advantageous." The transport landed, and they disembarked. Guards with four-fingered hands rested them firmly on polished pulse rifles. Their posture was rigid, their luminous eyes darting with unease. Arthur's instincts prickled. Soldiers carried themselves differently when fear was in their bones. They passed through layer after layer of security biometric gates, retinal scans, code verifications. Ira's every gesture was smooth and practiced, but Arthur noticed the faint quickening of her skin's glow as if even she was unsettled. Finally, the corridor opened into a cavernous chamber. The ceiling stretched 50 feet high, every surface lined with reinforced alloys, humming with containment fields. At the center stood a massive high-tech cage surrounded by nervous scientists and guards. Inside, chained with restraints that pulsed with suppressive energy, writhed a creature unlike anything Arthur had seen in his life. It was the size of an earth elephant, its body long and serpentine, covered in scales that shimmered blue like liquid metal. Enormous yellow-green eyes fixed on him, tracking his every movement. Appendages, part fin, part limb, shifted restlessly, scraping the reinforced floor. Arthur muttered under his breath, "What the hell?" Ira's voice was low, tinged with unease. "A leviathan, apex predator from our southern oceans. Captured for study, unmanageable." A figure approached, an older male Narathosian, robes flowing his skin a darker shade of blue. Authority radiated from his every movement. "The Alliance representative, I presume," he said, coldly, barely glancing at Arthur. "Director Thalos," Ira confirmed. "Commander Hansen is here to observe." Thalos finally looked at Arthur, his expression sharp and humorless. "You arrive at an opportune moment, human. This beast slaughtered 2 handlers yesterday. The High Council has decreed its termination. Your presence will prevent misunderstandings." Arthur stared at the Leviathan, studying more than its monstrous size. There was something in its gaze. Not rage, not feral instinct. Fear, intelligence, a plea. "What were you researching?" Arthur asked. "Adaptations to high-pressure environments." Thalos dismissed with a wave. "Nothing that breaches Alliance treaties." The creature thrashed suddenly, rattling its restraints. The scientists recoiled in terror, but Arthur noticed its movements weren't aggressive, they were desperate. "Has it been fed?" he asked sharply. A murmur passed between Thalos and Ira. "It refused all sustenance," she said cautiously. "After killing the handlers." "When was the last attempt?" Arthur pressed. Thalos's eyes narrowed. "Commander, this is not a pet. It's a predator impossible to control. Its destruction is scheduled at dawn. That is final." Arthur gave a small nod outwardly, but inside unease twisted through him. The rushed execution, the convenient timing of his visit, the animal's behavior that screamed hunger, not aggression. It all stank of orchestration. As the director turned to confer with his aides, Arthur leaned close to Era. "I'd like to come back later. Alone." Her glowing eyes widened slightly. "That would be inadvisable. Unauthorized." Arthur gave her a half smile. "Then I suppose you'll have to come with me." For the first time, Ira's flawless composure cracked, revealing a flicker of something beneath surprise, curiosity, maybe even intrigue. "You are either very brave or very foolish human." Arthur's grin widened. "I've been called worse, usually by scarier things." The massive containment chamber seemed to breathe with the hum of alien technology. Arthur's gaze remained fixed on the creature. The Leviathan's immense body shifted restlessly against its restraints, and each movement made the air vibrate with suppressed power. The bioluminescent scales across its form rippled like ocean waves, shimmering from deep azure to pale teal. Arthur had fought war beasts before, engineered horrors on battlefronts, where entire companies of soldiers had vanished in seconds. But this wasn't the same. Those eyes didn't burn with mindless rage. They followed him, intelligent, calculating, alive in a way that went beyond predator and prey. You see it too, don't you? Arthur murmured under his breath. Ira tilted her head, her luminous patterns faintly flickering. See what, Commander? That it's not just a beast, he replied quietly. There's something more there. Her expression was unreadable, a mask perfected over years of political service, but her eyes betrayed the slightest hesitation. She had noticed it as well. Director Thalos returned his robe-like garments, whispering as he approached. Commander Hansen, your curiosity is noted, but I must remind you the Alliance has little authority in our internal affairs. Observe if you wish, but interference will not be tolerated. Arthur's smile was polite, but his jaw tightened. Typical. The Alliance claimed to be united, yet every species clung to sovereignty whenever it suited them. He'd seen this too many times before secrecy dressed up as protocol cover-ups hidden behind ritual. He glanced back at the Leviathan. The great creature stirred, letting out a low rumble that resonated deep in Arthur's chest. The sound was not unlike a groan of hunger. Dangerous or not, Arthur said, every living thing needs to eat. If you starve it, what choice does it have? But violence. Thelus bristled, clearly unused to being questioned so directly. Commander, it has refused every offering, fish from its oceans, nutrient composites, even sedative-infused supplements. Its behavior proves it cannot be sustained or studied. It must be ended before more lives are lost. Or before it reveals something you don't want the Alliance to see, Arthur muttered under his breath. Ira shot him a sharp look, warning him to hold his tongue, but the spark in her glowing eyes betrayed that she wasn't entirely disagreeing. The scientists nearby busied themselves with their consoles, but Arthur could feel their fear, almost smell it in the recycled air. This wasn't the atmosphere of a neutral research experiment. It was a cage built atop paranoia. The Leviathan thrashed again, sending a vibration through the reinforced flooring. Several guards flinched, their fingers tightening on their weapons. Arthur remained steady, deliberately unmoving, letting the creature see that he wasn't afraid. Their eyes met again, yellow-green irises locking with his human gaze. It blinked slowly, not a predator's blink, something else, a signal of recognition. Arthur's instincts screamed louder than any briefing could. Something was wrong here. Dead handlers, a rushed order of termination, and a creature that seemed more intelligent than dangerous. Thalos raised his voice to the assembled staff. Prepare the termination sequence. Dawn will mark the end of this experiment. The chamber buzzed with tense activity as technicians tapped glowing controls, queuing up energy discharges and chemical injectors. Arthur said nothing, but a storm brewed behind his calm expression. Outside the chamber. Later, as Arthur and Ira exited through the layered security checkpoints, the silence between them weighed heavier than Narathos's gravity. Arthur finally broke it. Tell me something. Did you believe what your director said back there? Ira didn't answer immediately. Her glowing lines pulsed faintly, betraying the thoughts she was trying to conceal. The High Council's decisions are not mine to question, she said finally, though the evenness in her tone wavered ever so slightly. Arthur gave a humorless chuckle. That wasn't an answer. Her gaze snapped to him, her glowing irises hard as crystal. You humans think questioning authority is some great virtue. On Narathos, obedience is survival. Defiance isn't noble, it's treason. He leaned closer as they walked down the corridor, his voice low. Sometimes treason is just another word for doing what's right. For a moment, her steps faltered. She quickly recovered, resuming her fluid grace, but Arthur had seen it a fracture in her flawless facade. Back in quarters. Arthur's assigned quarters overlooked the shimmering sprawl of the alien city. Twin moons hung above, casting shifting silver light across towers of living metal. He stood at the viewport, armored hands clasped behind his back. His mind replayed the Leviathan's gaze again and again. The creature hadn't looked at him like prey. It had looked at him like a man drowning, searching for someone to throw a rope. Arthur removed a small ration pack from his pouch, fingers brushing over the contents. Protein bars, compressed nutrient tablets, and one rare item, a chocolate bar. Imported, expensive, save for emergencies. Something told me it's about to be more useful than a full clip of ammo, he thought grimly. A chime at the door startled him. He turned in hand instinctively, reaching for the sidearm on his desk. The door slid open, revealing Aira. Gone was the formal bodysuit. In its place, she wore more practical gear, dark fabric woven with flexible plating. Even dressed for stealth, her form exuded elegance. Her luminous patterns glowed more intensely in the dim light, reflecting agitation. "I knew you'd attempt something reckless," she said flatly, stepping inside uninvited. Arthur arched a brow. "Come to stop me?" Her gaze held his unblinking. "No, I'm coming with you." Arthur studied her carefully. Why the change of heart? For the first time, hesitation flickered across her features. She lowered her voice. "Something about this doesn't align." Authorization for Leviathan research was rushed. Protocols were bypassed. The High Council never moves this fast unless they're hiding something. Arthur allowed himself a faint smile. "You've had doubts for a while." Her lips tightened. "Doubts I could ignore until you arrived." "Why me?" She stepped closer, her luminescence pulsing subtly. "Because humans don't follow orders blindly. You question, you act. Sometimes irrationally, but perhaps that's necessary." Arthur felt a warmth stir in his chest, though his expression remained composed. "Then I guess we're committing treason together." Ira's lips curved ever so slightly. "Perhaps." Returned to the chamber. Navigating through the station's service corridors, Ira moved like water fluid, precise, disarming security scanners with practiced ease. Arthur followed, noting the confidence in her every motion. "You've done this before," he whispered. "I've thought about it before," she corrected softly, "but never acted. Until now." "Then why tonight?" She glanced at him, her glowing patterns quickening almost like a blush. "You." Arthur swallowed the sudden tightness in his throat. "Focus, Hansen. The mission." They slipped through a maintenance hatch and into the darkened chamber. The Leviathan loomed in the center, restrained its scales dim in the low light. Its massive eyes opened, fixing directly on Arthur the moment he stepped into view. The silence was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the containment field. Arthur approached slowly, hands visible, movements deliberate. He spoke softly, voice carrying across the chamber. "Hey there, big guy. Hungry?" The Leviathan's stirred nostrils flaring. Arthur pulled the chocolate bar from his pouch, unwrapping it with exaggerated slowness. The rich scent wafted through the air. Behind him, Ira whispered sharply, "Arthur, that's insane." The creature lunged forward. Ira tensed, ready to fire, but Arthur didn't flinch. The Leviathan extended a delicate feeding appendage, taking the bar gently from his hand. It devoured the offering in one swift motion, then let out a deep rumble that vibrated through the floor. Arthur grinned. Guess he likes Earth cuisine. Cautiously, he extended his hand again. Slowly and possibly, the Leviathan leaned into his touch. Its scales were smooth, warm, thrumming faintly with energy. Ira's breath caught. Impossible. Leviathans don't bond with outsiders, not with anyone. Arthur stroked the creature's head, keeping his voice low. "I don't think it killed those handlers. Look at it. Responsive. Intelligent. This wasn't mindless aggression." Ira stepped closer, almost against her will. Shoulder brushing his arm, her luminous eyes were wide, her patterns pulsing fast. "The official report said the handlers were devoured," she whispered. "But I never saw the bodies. Everything was concealed." Arthur turned his head slightly, meeting her gaze. The proximity made the air itself feel charged tension, stretching between duty and something far more personal. The Leviathan rumbled again, snapping them back to reality. Arthur pulled his hand back reluctantly. "We can't leave it here. They'll kill it at dawn." Ira hesitated. "That would be treason. Against the High Council, against my people." Arthur's voice was quiet but resolute. "Then welcome to humanity. Treason's another word for not letting fear dictate what's right." Ira's patterns pulsed brighter like a flush across her blue skin. She whispered almost to herself, "I'm beginning to see the appeal." Arthur looked up at the Leviathan, whose intelligent eyes met his with unmistakable awareness. "Some things," he said, "are worth the risk." The chamber lay in semi-darkness, lit only by the faint bioluminescent pulse of Narathosian tech and the Leviathan's shimmering scales. Arthur and Ira stood shoulder to shoulder before the massive cage. The creature's breath fogged the reinforced barrier in slow, heavy bursts. Arthur's hand lingered against the bar's palm, still tingling from where the Leviathan had leaned into his touch. That rumble, that vibration, it had not been hunger alone. It had been recognition. Ira's voice broke the silence low and sharp. Arthur, if we do this, there is no going back. No pardon. No negotiation. They will brand us as traitors. Arthur didn't look at her. His eyes stayed on the Leviathan. I've worn a lot of labels in my life. Traitor is easier to live with than coward. Ira turned to him, her patterns glowing brighter, betraying the storm behind her calm tone. You don't understand. My people will not merely punish you. They will erase you. History will record you as a danger to civilization itself. He finally met her gaze, steady and unflinching. Maybe history needs rewriting. Her lips parted, but no words came. The Leviathan shifted, chains clinking like thunder in the chamber, and her protest died in her throat. The plan. Arthur knelt beside the access console. Alien glyphs flickered across its surface, pulsing in rhythmic sequences. Can you get these restraints open? He asked, glancing at Aira. She hesitated. Yes, but Arthur's grin was faint, humorless. There's always a but. The systems are layered, she explained, fingers brushing the console reluctantly. Every release command triggers an automatic alert to the High Council's security division. The moment I override it, they'll know. Arthur straightened, brushing dust from his gauntlets. Then we'd better be gone before they get here. Ira exhaled slowly like someone plunging into freezing water. You humans really are reckless. He gave a half smile. We call it optimism. Breaking the seal. Ira's fingers danced across the glowing interface. Each glyph responded to her touch with ripples of light. Arthur watched as her usual calm mask slipped into focus and concentration. The patterns along her skin pulsed in tandem, with the console merging alien physiology with alien technology. Arthur found himself staring not at the tech, but at her. The way her braids shifted as she leaned forward, the faint shimmer of her skin's glow, the steadiness of her hands. He shook himself. Focus, Hansen. Now isn't the time. The Leviathan rumbled impatiently, tugging at its restraints. Its massive body quivered with suppressed power scales, flaring with the iridescence that painted the chamber walls in hues of blue and green. Almost there, Ira murmured, sweat beating faintly along her temple. Arthur stood guard, weapon drawn, eyes flicking between the doors and the beast. His instincts screamed they were standing in the jaws of something colossal, not just the Leviathan, but the entire Narathosian system waiting to crash down on them. The final glyph pulsed. The console emitted a resonant clank that echoed through the chamber. Ira froze. That's the last seal. Arthur's heart thudded once hard. Do it. Her glowing eyes flicked to his. Arthur. Some things are worth the risk, he said firmly. Ira pressed the final command. The release. With a sound like thunder splitting stone, the restraints snapped loose. Energy fields collapsed in a cascade of sparks. The chamber seemed to exhale as the Leviathan surged free, its serpentine body uncoiling with terrifying grace. Arthur instinctively raised his weapon, not at the creature, but at the doors. Ira stepped back, her luminous patterns flaring in fear as the Leviathan rose to its full height, towering 20 feet, scales rippling like an ocean storm. The creature loomed over them, massive head, lowering eyes burning with intensity. Ira whispered, "By the seas, what have we done?" Arthur slowly holstered his weapon and stepped forward. "We've given it a choice." The Leviathan let out a sound, not a roar, but a resonant harmonic rumble that shook the very floor. It lowered its head toward Arthur again, the same gesture of gratitude, more profound now that it was free. Arthur reached up and pressed his palm against its warm scales. "You're welcome." Ira watched, stunned. This shouldn't be possible. Leviathans are apex predators. They do not bond. Arthur smiled faintly without looking back. Guess nobody told him that. The alarm. The moment of wonder shattered as a piercing alarm blared through the chamber. Red glyphs flashed across the walls. Containment breach detected, the AI announced coldly. All personnel report to Sector 4. Ira cursed in her native tongue, her glow pulsing erratically. They're coming. We must move now. Arthur glanced at the Leviathan. The massive beast tilted its head, then lowered its body fins, flattening against the floor. Arthur's mouth curved into a grin. I think he wants us to ride. Ira's jaw dropped. That's madness. Welcome to humanity's favorite pastime. Arthur extended his hand toward her. Trust me. Her glowing eyes locked on his, searching. Then with a muttered curse, she clasped his hand. He pulled her up beside him as he climbed onto the Leviathan's broad back. Her arms wrapped around his waist, her body pressed close against his armored frame. Even through the suit, he could feel the warmth of her, the subtle vibration of her patterns against his back. The Leviathan's muscles bunched beneath them. "Hold on tight," Arthur said as the beast let out a deafening roar and surged forward. The escape. The chamber doors burst open. Director Thalos appeared flanked by 6 armed guards. His voice boomed fury, twisting his features. "Stop them! The specimen cannot leave." The Leviathan reared up, releasing a roar so powerful the walls trembled. It surged forward, scattering the guards like leaves in a storm. Energy weapons fired wildly, bolts of searing plasma streaking through the air. The Leviathan twisted with impossible agility, weaving between shots, its scales deflecting some blasts, Arthur's combat suit shielding him in era from debris. They smashed through a transparent wall shard, spraying outward like a rain of stars. Alarms howled. Narathosian soldiers shouted as the Leviathan thundered through corridors not meant to contain it. Arthur leaned low against the creature, shouting over the chaos. Maintenance docks to the right. The Leviathan banked smoothly, almost as if it understood. Ira clung tighter, her voice half terror, half exhilaration. "This is insanity." Arthur grinned, teeth flashing. Insanity's another word for fun. The leap. They burst into a vast atrium. Overhead, the twin moons of Narathos glowed through the dome, casting ethereal light on their escape. Ahead lay the lake's iridescent waters, shimmering with promise of freedom. Behind them, shouts and weapons fire grew louder. Director Thalus's enraged cry echoed. "Traitors, you doom us all." The Leviathan didn't slow. It charged toward the outer wall scales, blazing with radiant light. With a thunderous impact, it shattered the barrier, sending fragments cascading like falling stars. Cold alien water rushed in, surging around them. Arthur's combat suit sealed, adapting instantly. Aira gasped as gill-like structures behind her ears fluttered open, her body shifting seamlessly for aquatic survival. The Leviathan plunged into the lake, carrying them deep beneath the surface. Light fractured above, distant and unreachable. Around them, the alien water glowed faintly alive with drifting, luminescent flora. Arthur's pulse thundered, adrenaline crashing through him. He turned his head slightly, seeing Ira's silver hair streaming like liquid light in the currents. She looked back, her glowing patterns, bright even underwater eyes wide with awe and something else. They had done it. Against every order, every law, every threat. They had freed the impossible. In the depth, the Leviathan propelled them with fluid, breathtaking power. Schools of smaller, bioluminescent creatures scattered before it. The sensation was surreal, riding a myth through an alien sea, hearts pounding in sync with the rhythm of survival. Arthur tightened his grip, adrenaline giving way to a fierce clarity. He had crossed the line. There was no going back. He had defied a high council, shattered diplomatic protocol, and allied himself with a creature considered a monster. And yet, as the Leviathan rumbled beneath him and Ira's arms held fast around his waist, Arthur felt more certain than ever. Sometimes humanity's greatest strength wasn't logic or power. It was the refusal to let fear dictate mercy. The alien waters roared around them as the Leviathan surged forward, its colossal body cutting through the currents like a living warship. Arthur clung to the ridges of its scale back, his combat suit adapting pressure with faint hisses. Ira's grip tightened around his waist, her gill structures flaring rhythmically as though born for this environment. Above Elysium Station glimmered faintly, its domes and spires silhouetted against the twin moons. Floodlights swept across the lake, piercing the depths in desperate search. Sirens howled through the water, muffled but relentless. "They'll deploy pursuit craft," Arthur shouted through his helmet's comm, his voice distorted by the pressure. "We don't have long." Ira pressed closer to his back, her voice cool but strained. "You've already made certain of that. Half the High Council will be rallying fleets by dawn." Arthur's grin was grim. Good thing I never planned to stick around for the morning. The Leviathan rumbled beneath them, a vibration so deep it felt like the heartbeat of the sea itself. It angled upward, breaking the surface in a titanic spray of iridescent foam. The cold night air hit them sharp with ozone and salt. In the distance, lights flared on the docks. Sleek Narathosian pursuit skimmers lifted from the water engines, whining like angry hornets. "Here they come," Arthur muttered. The pursuit. The skimmers raced across the water, leaving trails of glowing blue spray. Energy cannons swiveled into position, their barrels lighting with charge. The Leviathan roared a sound so loud it cracked across the lake like thunder. Arthur's ears rang even through his suit's dampeners. The beast dove again, pulling them deep, weaving through coral-like structures that pulsed with bioluminescent life. Blasts seared into the water above scattering schools of glowing fish. One struck too close, shockwaves slamming Arthur and Era against the Leviathan's ridged scales. Ira's arms tightened, her body shuddering against his. "This is madness," she gasped. Arthur barked a laugh despite the chaos. "Told you humanity specialized in madness." The Leviathan twisted through the undergrowth tail, whipping with enough force to shatter rock spires. Pursuit craft chased beams cutting through the water like lances of light, but none matched the creature's speed. Arthur leaned forward, patting the Leviathan's scales. "Come on, big guy, show them what you can do." As if understanding, the Leviathan veered sharply, coiling its immense body. Its scales began to glow brighter, shifting from azure to blinding white blue. The entire lake seemed to pulse with its radiance. Ira gasped, "Arthur, it's channeling energy." The first display. The Leviathan opened its jaws, not to bite, not to roar. A beam of pure energy erupted, slicing through the water in a concentrated lance of light. It struck one of the pursuit skimmers dead on. The craft disintegrated fragments, glowing red as they spiraled down into the abyss. Arthur's eyes widened. "Well, that's new." Ira's voice trembled with awe. "Not new. Legendary. Our myth spoke of guardians leviathans born not as predators, but protectors of the seas. I thought they were stories." Another skimmer closed in. The Leviathan's scales pulsed, and another beam shot forth, narrowly missing, but sending the craft spinning away in a plume of steam and shattered hull. Arthur's grin was fierce. "Looks like the myths are real." Ira clutched tighter to him, torn between fear and wonder. "And the High Council has been trying to weaponize them." Arthur's jaw clenched. "Of course they have. That's what tyrants do with miracles." Breaking the surface, the Leviathan surged upward again, smashing through the waves in a spray of foam. Ahead loomed the docks, where Arthur's shuttle rested on a platform. Floodlights locked onto them. Dozens of armed Narathosians scrambled, weapons ready. Arthur cursed under his breath. "They're not going to let us leave quietly." The Leviathan rumbled low as though sensing his resolve. It swam directly toward the docks, unbothered by the storm of weapons fire erupting around them. Energy blasts lit the night, searing past them. One struck the Leviathan's flank, and it let out a roar of pain that shook Arthur's bones. He felt the vibration through his entire chest. Arthur Era shouted, "It's injured!" Arthur leaned down, pressing a hand to its scales. "Stay with us, big guy, just a little farther." The Leviathan roared again, scales flaring brighter in defiance. It crashed into the docks, smashing through barricades and scattering soldiers like toys. Metal screamed and twisted under its massive weight. Arthur leapt from its back, dragging Era with him. They landed hard on the platform, rolling to absorb the impact. The Leviathan loomed behind them, guarding their backs with a wall of scales and fury. Arthur sprinted for the shuttle. His authorization codes flickered across the interface, the hatch hissing open. He shoved Ira inside, turning back to face the beast. "Come on," he called, voice raw. The Leviathan lowered its head, meeting his gaze with those immense, intelligent eyes. It rumbled once more, low and resonant, then back slowly into the water. Ira's breath caught. "It's staying behind." Arthur's chest tightened, protecting our exit. For a moment, the man and the beast regarded each other. Arthur raised his hand in silent salute. The Leviathan responded with a deep, harmonious rumble before sinking beneath the waves. Arthur turned and sealed the shuttle's hatch. Into the skies, engines roared as the shuttle lifted from the platform. Energy blasts streaked past them, rocking the vessel. Arthur's hands danced across controls, voice hard. "Hold together, baby. Just hold together." The shuttle shot upward, breaking through cloud cover into the cold black of space. Stars glittered above like silent witnesses. Ira collapsed into the co-pilot's seat, her luminous patterns flickering erratically, reflecting her turmoil. She looked at him, her voice almost a whisper. "Do you realize what you've done?" Arthur's eyes stayed on the controls. "Yeah, I gave it a chance." She shook her head, almost laughing despite herself. "You've ignited a political firestorm. Narathos will call for your execution. The Alliance will disavow you." Arthur glanced at her, lips quirking. Then I guess you're stuck with me. Her glowing eyes met his, something unspoken sparking between them. Reckless human, she murmured. The fleet moved. Warning lights flashed across the console. Ira leaned forward, scanning readings. Narathosian warships are mobilizing from orbit. We have minutes before they intercept. Arthur swore under his breath. The shuttle rattled as he punched the throttle engine, straining. We'll make it. We have to. But then the console chimed again. Fuel cell warning. Damage indicators from debris back at the dock. Ira's patterns dimmed in alarm. 2 of your main fuel cells are compromised. You cannot outrun them. Arthur's hands tightened on the controls. His jaw set. We'll drift if we have to. As long as we're out of their territory, we've got a chance. Ira studied him, her luminous gaze softening. You would risk dying in the void for a creature not your own. Arthur finally looked at her, voice low but steady. For something that deserves to live, isn't that reason enough? Her patterns pulsed brighter now, in a rhythm she hadn't shown him before. To her people, it was a dangerous confession, interest, admiration, maybe even attraction. Arthur's suit registered the spike in his own pulse, adjusting his temperature. He chuckled quietly. Great, now my suit's embarrassed for me. Ira laughed softly, the sound like crystal chimes, even as alarms blared around them. Perhaps your kind's madness has a certain charm. The shuttle pushed past Narathos's moons, leaving the world behind. Pursuit signals still flared on sensors, but for the moment, they had broken free. Arthur leaned back, heart still pounding. He thought of the leviathan of its eyes and the sound of its rumble. They had unleashed something the galaxy had long forgotten, not a weapon, not a beast, but a guardian. And humanity for once hadn't come bearing chains. They had come bearing kindness. The shuttle drifted silently, its hull vibrating faintly as damaged fuel cells struggled to keep power balanced. Warning glyphs glowed across the cockpit's displays, a grim reminder that escape had been bought at a price. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, cold and indifferent, while the blue-white orb of Narathos shrank behind them. Arthur's hands rested on the controls, knuckles pale from gripping them too long. His combat suit whispered faint alerts, elevated heart rate, oxygen consumption, spike, muscular tension. None of it mattered. His mind was still, with the Leviathan sinking back into the iridescent waters, staying behind to shield their escape. Ira sat beside him, her posture tense but graceful, silver hair still damp, clinging to the contours of her neck and shoulders. Her luminescent skin patterns glowed faintly in the low light, the rhythm slower now, more contemplative than frantic. She had barely spoken since their escape. Finally, Arthur exhaled heavily and broke the silence. He stayed behind. To protect us. Ira's gaze flickered to him, her glowing eyes troubled. Guardians, if that is truly what he was, are not supposed to exist, at least not anymore. Our texts call them myths, yet there he was. Arthur gave a humorless chuckle. Funny thing about myths, they have a way of turning real when it's inconvenient for those in power. Ira leaned back, crossing her arms. Her luminescence pulsed faintly with agitation. If what we saw was a guardian, the High Council has lied for centuries. They would never admit it. Not to our people, not to the Alliance. Arthur's jaw tightened, which means they'll hunt us. Hard. Her lips curved into something halfway between a smirk and a sigh. You have a talent for understatement, human. Arthur met her gaze. Arthur, he corrected softly. She blinked, then repeated almost experimentally, Arthur. The way his name rolled from her alien tongue sent an unexpected warmth through his chest. A fragile haven. Hours passed. Systems dimmed further as Arthur initiated strict power conservation protocols. Lights lowered, environmental controls slackened, temperature dropping steadily. Their breath fogged faintly in the cool air. Arthur stood, moving to the shuttle's small storage compartment. He rummaged through emergency supplies, pulling out thermal blankets and standard-issue Alliance garments. We'll need these. Cabin temperature's falling. Last thing we need is hypothermia on top of everything else. He handed her a folded bundle. Ira raised a brow, her luminous markings flickering with amusement. Human modesty. Charming. Arthur turned his back, muttering, It's called respect. He heard the rustle of fabric, the soft brush of the thermal blanket as she wrapped it around herself. When her voice came again, it was closer, warm against the cool cabin air. Respect and modesty, more contradictions. You rush into danger without hesitation, but you avert your eyes at bare skin. Strange. Arthur allowed himself a crooked smile, still facing away. Strange works for us. When he turned back, she was seated in the co-pilot's chair again, the blanket draped elegantly over her form. Her damp hair clung to the luminous patterns along her collarbone, glowing softly like starlight trapped under her skin. She tilted her head, watching him. "Your heart," she murmured, her glowing eyes narrowing. "It beats so fast, even at rest." Arthur chuckled, settling opposite her. "Human normal, though you might be part of the reason." Her lips curved slightly, the alien equivalent of a smile. Confessions in the coal. Time stretched thin in the drifting shuttle. They shared ration packs, trading stories in the dim glow of emergency lights. Arthur spoke of Earth's oceans, its sprawling forests, its crowded cities, and endless skies. Ira, in turn, described Narathos's ancient history, an empire of the seas that had risen to the stars long before humans had learned to farm. Their voices filled the silence, weaving threads of two worlds together. At one point, Arthur gestured at the soft glow tracing along her arm. The luminescent, what does it mean? She glanced down at her own patterns, which pulsed gently in flowing waves. It is like your expressions. Part instinct, part control. It reflects emotional states, and we can communicate with it. Arthur leaned closer, and right now, her eyes met his, the glow brightening slightly. Her voice was low, deliberate. "It says I am intrigued, curious, attracted." Arthur's breath caught. On Earth, such confessions would be tangled in hesitation, buried under caution. Here in the cold void of space, it was offered plain. "I've never been good at dancing around things," Arthur admitted. Her laugh was soft, melodic. Another contradiction. Warriors with gentle hearts. For a moment, their hands brushed, and the shuttle's cramped space felt charged, intimate. But then a sharp alert chimed across the console. The signal. Arthur snapped upright, scanning readings. Distress call. Faint but there. Ira leaned over her hair, brushing his shoulder. "That's not a standard distress pattern." "Wait." Her glowing eyes widened. "It's the same harmonic frequency the Guardian used." "A Guardian's signal." Arthur swore softly. "Another one." She nodded slowly, patterns pulsing with urgency. "Not just one. Look, the modulation. It's a cluster call. More than one Guardian. Perhaps a clutch." Arthur's stomach dropped. "Eggs." He locked eyes with her. "If they've captured more." Ira's voice hardened. "Then the High Council's corruption runs deeper than I feared." The distress signal grew clearer as they closed distance. Sensors picked up a massive transport vessel, Narathosian design but off official registries. Its hull was scarred, battered, and around it swarmed smaller ships with jagged, mismatched plating. "Pirates," Arthur muttered. Ira's glow dimmed. "Not ordinary pirates. Look at their weapons. Military grade. Someone supplied them." Arthur's eyes narrowed, which means someone wants this transport taken. The betrayal. They hid in the shadow of the transport's massive engine array, scanning comm channels. Voices crackled through the translator. "Surrender the specimen. Shields failing. You cannot escape." "This vessel is under High Council protection," came the strained reply. "Any aggression will." "Spare me, Captain. Your council doesn't know you're here. Unauthorized transport of a highly valuable asset. No one will come for you." Arthur and Ira exchanged grim looks. Then another voice cut in, smooth, clipped, unmistakably human. "This is Commander Vance," it said. "Perhaps we can negotiate. I represent interests that will pay far more than your buyers." Arthur stiffened, recognition slamming into him. "You know him," Ira whispered. Arthur's jaw clenched. "Thomas Vance, Alliance Spec Ops. We served together. He went Merc 3 years ago." Her patterns flared in alarm. "He works with the pirates now." Arthur's voice was bitter. "He works for anyone who pays, and apparently for whoever wants Guardians turned into weapons." Ira's gaze lingered on him, sensing the storm beneath his calm. "This complicates things." Arthur gave a humorless chuckle. "That's one way to put it." Choices. The shuttle's cabin felt smaller, air thicker. Arthur leaned back, rubbing a hand across his jaw. "We could turn away, drift until repairs are done, play it safe." Ira's glowing gaze fixed on him. "But that is not what you will do." He met her eyes steady. "No, because if they have more Guardians, maybe eggs, we can't just let that happen." Her hand found his fingers intertwining cool skin against his warmth. Then I am with you, reckless human. Arthur smiled faintly, squeezing her hand. Guess you're reckless now, too. The shuttle angled toward the transport. Intimacy before the storm. They both knew what lay ahead, overwhelming odds, danger, perhaps death. The cabin grew colder as systems dimmed further, forcing them closer under shared blankets. Ira's patterns glowed softly against the darkness. Her voice was quiet, almost vulnerable. Among my people, when death seems certain, we leave nothing unsaid. No regrets to carry into the void. Arthur studied her understanding dawning. He reached out fingertips, tracing the glowing lines along her cheek. No regrets, he whispered. Her lips met his, cool and electric. The kiss deepened, a collision of worlds of difference made irrelevant in the face of raw connection. Her patterns flared brilliantly, casting the cabin in shifting blue light. For a time, the void outside ceased to exist. Afterward, tangled together beneath the blanket, Era rested her head against his chest, listening to his rapid heartbeat. Your physiology, so fragile, yet so resilient. Contradiction again. Arthur chuckled softly, brushing silver hair from her face. You're starting to like contradictions. Her glowing eyes met his. Perhaps I am. The proximity alert blared suddenly, wrenching them back. Pirate ships were closing in for the kill. Arthur pressed a quick kiss to her forehead before reaching for his combat suit. Time to be heroes. The shuttle's airlock hissed open with a metallic groan. Arthur's boots clanged against the deck plating of the Narathosian transport, his combat suit amplifying each movement. Behind him, Era moved with silent precision, her silver braids swaying luminous patterns flaring faintly as she scanned the corridor. The ship was already chaos. Distant explosions rattled the bulkheads. Energy fire echoed through passageways. The pirates had breached multiple sections, their mismatched armor and brutal disruptor weapons tearing through Narathosian security lines. Arthur glanced at the tactical readout flickering on his wrist display. Containment section is 2 decks down. That's where the Guardian and whatever else they're hiding is. Ira nodded, her jaw set. The command center is above. Vance will be there. Arthur's eyes hardened. Then we split. I'll deal with Vance. You free the Guardian. Ira caught his wrist, her luminous fingers cool against his skin. Be careful. He knows you. He'll anticipate you. Arthur gave a faint grin. Yeah, but I know him too. He squeezed her hand once, then leaned down and pressed a brief kiss to her lips, fast or rough, a promise in the middle of war. That's a human oath, he whispered. Then he was gone, pounding down a side corridor toward the upper decks. Clash in the command center. Arthur slipped through a maintenance shaft, bypassing a barricaded stairwell. The shaft opened into a side room adjacent to the command bridge. He forced the panel open and emerged silently, pulse rifle raised. The command center was chaos. The reinforced doors glowed red-hot as pirates cut through, sparks flying. Narathosian officers crouched behind consoles, weapons trained on the entrance. And there, standing at the central console, as calm as a man reading a book, was Thomas Vance. The former Alliance operative looked almost the same as Arthur remembered, tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair cropped short. But his eyes had hardened into something colder, mercenary pragmatism replacing soldierly conviction. He was calmly downloading data even as the ship burned around him. Hello, Thomas, Arthur called, stepping from the shadows. His rifle stayed steady, aimed squarely at his old comrade. Vance turned, surprise flickering across his face before settling into a sardonic smile. Arthur Hansen, I should have known the Alliance would send you. Though fraternizing with the locals? He smirked. That's off script, even for you. Arthur ignored the jab. You're working with pirates now. Selling out Guardians to the highest bidder. Selling out, Vance chuckled darkly. No, Arthur, I'm completing the mission. What mission? The real one. The Alliance has known about the Guardian program for months. These creatures aren't just animals, they're living weapons. Power beyond anything we've fielded. My orders were to secure that power, by any means necessary. Arthur's grip tightened on his rifle. They're not weapons. I've seen them. They're intelligent. They protect. Vance shook his head, almost pitying. Always the idealist. You think kindness wins wars? No, power does. Control does. And with Guardians under our command, humanity could finally dominate the Alliance instead of begging for scraps of respect. Arthur's eyes narrowed. That's not strength, Thomas. That's fear wearing a mask. Before Vance could reply, the command doors blew inward with a shriek of tortured metal. Pirates stormed in, weapons blazing. Narathosian officers returned fire, the bridge descending into chaos. Arthur dove for cover, firing precise bursts. Vance cursed and joined him, shooting down two pirates with brutal efficiency. "Looks like we're on the same side for now," Vance muttered, reloading. "I'm not on your side," Arthur snapped. "I'm on theirs." Revelation below. Meanwhile, Ira sprinted through smoke-filled corridors, her movements fluid despite the chaos. She reached the containment deck, its blast doors blown outward from an earlier explosion. Inside, the chamber glowed with eerie light. At its center, the Guardian coiled protectively around a cluster of large, iridescent eggs nestled in a shallow pool. Its scales pulsed with blue-white radiance, energy rippling across its massive frame. Pirates circled, hesitant but determined, their weapons trained on the eggs. Ira's heart pounded. Dozens of them, a breeding clutch. The pirate leader, a hulking reptilian brute with cybernetic implants, snarled at his men. "Take the eggs. They're worth more than the ship itself." Ira raised her weapon and fired, striking one pirate through the chest. The others scattered, but the Guardian's roar shook the chamber, sending several staggering, back in terror. The beast's intelligent eyes locked on her. Recognition flickered. She stepped forward, slowly lowering her weapon, speaking softly. "Easy. We're here to help. Arthur sent me." The Guardian rumbled low, then shifted, shielding the eggs more tightly with its coils. Its trust was not freely given, but it had not attacked. That was enough. Reunion in chaos. Arthur burst into the containment chamber minutes later, pulse rifle smoking, Vance at his heels. Captain Renox, the Narathosian commander, limped in with a handful of surviving officers. The sight stopped them all cold. The Guardian towered above its energy radiance, lighting the chamber like a second sun. Around it lay the eggs, shimmering alive. Arthur's eyes widened. By God, it's not just one, it's a future. Vance's expression hardened. Exactly, and whoever controls this, controls everything. The pirate leader bellowed, charging forward. "Kill them all, the eggs are mine!" Arthur stepped in front of the Guardian, lowering his weapon deliberately. "They're not weapons, they're children." The Guardian's gaze fixed on him. Slowly, deliberately, Arthur reached into his pouch and pulled out his last chocolate bar. He unwrapped it, extended it forward. The pirates shouted in disbelief. Rennick swore under his breath. Ira held hers. The Guardian's nostrils flared. It extended a delicate appendage, taking the chocolate with surprising gentleness. It rumbled a sound of pleasure and recognition, lowering its massive head toward Arthur's outstretched hand. "See," Arthur said softly, stroking its scales. "Not everything has to be taken by force." The pirate leader roared in fury, raising his weapon. Before he could fire, Vance drew his pistol and shot him clean through the chest. Arthur turned, startled. Vance smirked bitterly. "Don't look so surprised. I'm pragmatic, not suicidal. That thing trusts you, which means you're our only chance." The reactor countdown. An alarm blared shrill and final. Reactor containment breach. Detonation imminent in 5 minutes. Arthur cursed. "We need to move, now." Renox limped forward. There are biological specimen pods in the escape bay, large enough for the Guardian and its clutch. Arthur's eyes narrowed. "And why would you help?" Renek's expression was grim. "Because I've seen enough. You've shown me another way. Maybe it's time we learn." Together they worked feverishly. Pirates who remained dropped weapons and fled. Officers helped load the eggs into the pods. The Guardian itself moved delicately, cradling its offspring, placing them gently inside the pod's cradle. But when the hatch closed, a problem became clear. "The pod won't launch automatically," Ira said urgently. "It requires manual release from the control station." Arthur's chest tightened. Someone has to stay behind. Vance stepped forward. "I'll do it." Arthur stared. "Thomas, don't get sentimental." Vance pressed the stolen data core into Arthur's hand. "Make sure this gets to the right people, not the bastards who want to weaponize it." Arthur gripped his shoulder. For a moment, old camaraderie flickered. "See you on the other side." Vance gave a sardonic salute. Wouldn't miss it. The pod sealed. With a thunderous jolt, it launched into space, carrying the Guardian and its eggs to safety. Arthur and Aira sprinted for the adjacent pod, Renox and his men at their heels. Behind them, the ship groaned with the final death throes of its reactor. Their pod ejected just as the transport detonated in a blinding explosion, the shock wave propelling them farther into the void. 3 months later, Sanctuary. The moon hung in silence, barren and untouched until now. Oceanic habitats stretched across its surface, glowing domes filled with shimmering water. Guardians swam freely within their scales, lighting the artificial reefs. Young hatchlings darted playfully under the watchful gaze of the elder. Arthur stood at the observation deck, arms folded, watching the magnificent creatures glide through their new sanctuary. Ira joined him, dressed not as a liaison now, but as a xenobiologist, her luminous patterns pulsing with calm contentment. She leaned lightly against him, her voice soft. Worth every fight. Arthur slipped an arm around her waist. The Alliance signed off today. Guardians are officially recognized as sentient beings, protected by law. She smiled faintly, and the High Council. Arthur smirked. Thanks to Captain Renox's testimony, they have agreed to fund the sanctuary. As for Director Thalos, he's enjoying early retirement, in a cell. The door slid open. Vance entered now, wearing the uniform of the Alliance Diplomatic Corps. He still carried that sardonic smirk. Press is here. They're eager to meet the man who tamed a beast with chocolate. Arthur groaned. That headline will haunt me forever. Ira laughed, her luminous patterns flaring with joy. Vance shrugged. It sells. Humanity, the species that makes friends instead of weapons. Very inspirational. They turned back to the viewport. A young guardian swam past its scales, glowing as it played. For the first time in centuries, a future seemed possible, not ruled by fear or control, but by respect and partnership. Arthur squeezed Ira's hand, his voice quiet but firm. Sometimes the greatest strength isn't domination. It's kindness, even when everyone else calls it weakness. Ira's glowing eyes met his, her patterns pulsing in that rhythm he now knew by heart. Gentle hands, she whispered. That is what my people would call you. Arthur smiled faintly. I'll take it. The doors opened again, revealing the grand hall where dozens of alien ambassadors waited for the ceremony. All eyes would soon turn to the human who had chosen compassion over fear, who had changed the course of interstellar history with nothing more than courage and a piece of chocolate. Arthur stepped forward, Ira at his side, ready to face not just the galaxy but the future they would build together.